Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show. And I got my friend here, Isaac Kight. He has the
Inside Isreal News Show.
Inside Isreal News Show. Now, that's particularly interesting because that's going to be the basic theme of tonight's interview, or should I say conversation? You know how I do it. It's not necessarily an interview. It's more of a conversation where we're just going to discuss some issues. You're welcome to chime in and when you see this and hear it. But we're gonna touch on some things that are important to America and important to Americans, important to our faith, important to our relationships. Because after all, everything is about relationship. If you don't have relationship, you have problems. Perhaps that's why we have so many problems in America today. It's because we don't have our relationships properly in order. So we're going to have Isaac Kight here with me, and we're going to discuss some of these issues, some of these relationship things, and maybe we can get a better handle on what's going down. So
more love, less hate. Yeah, a little bit. I thought it was really funny when you pitched the idea of us doing this show. Mm-hmm. You said we should call it fried chicken and gefilte fish.
Something like that.
I thought that was just great because that has a sense of humor all its own and a life of its own with stereotypes and whatever. Because sometimes that stuff can be funny.
Exactly.
Let's be real. It can be funny. Anyway, so I thought this was a great idea.
Fried chicken and gefilte fish. Now, I tried gefilte fish. It's pretty good. I like it. What about you with the chicken?
Oh, I love fried chicken. Kids love fried chicken. Fried chicken's good.
Who doesn't love fried chicken? You know what I'm saying? But you got to try some of that fish, too. It's pretty good. Now, there's something else that I like that's a Jewish dish. Matzah?
Matzah, yeah, the matzo ball soup.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Oh, man. I'll eat that all day long. So here we are. It's a little dark, as you guys can see, but we're in a beautiful location here in Anaheim. And we're just going to run through some topics real quick. There were a few influencers that I was hoping would make it on, but we had technical difficulties tonight. So bear with us on that. I want to start with the most important piece of news that's happening in America tonight. If you don't know what that is, then you must have just got off the spaceship with the rest of the aliens, right? The most important news issue in America today is these incessant and constant indictments of President Donald J. Trump. Isaac, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, God. Back in 2020 in October, I wrote an article about what would happen on Political Vanguard, which you also share.
I'm a contributor.
Also contribute with it. So I wrote this article on Political Vanguard talking about all the things that were going to happen if Biden won the election. Mm-hmm. And I said, basically, we're going to become a banana republic, for real. And all those things have happened. In fact, we found out they were censoring free speech before the election.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not just, Facebook, but like FBI conspiring to and now
we want to talk about the FBI.
Yes. Now we've got charges against Donald Trump, and they just keep coming, and all of them are stupid. I mean, there's no better word for them. I mean, they are absolutely inane. What are they charging him for? If election denial is a crime, then how come Hillary Clinton hasn't been charged?
Exactly. I mean, didn't she cry? She was like,
oh, she was on all over the place. She was even on The View saying that
they stole my election. They stole my election.
Exactly. So I mean, this gets stupid really fast. The thing is, they know that Donald Trump is a serious candidate. What I think the narrative that's being developed out there that what I think they're after is this idea that, well, they're both crooks. Because we're getting the information out about Joe Biden. Now we know. Yeah. And they're just saying, well, look, they're both crooks. And I'm hearing that from a few people who are kind of nominally in the middle. And so I think that's the game they're playing. And everyone knows Donald Trump isn't a crook. Not to say he's perfect. Okay. But look.
Well, watch this. Yeah. Let me just say this real quick.
Yeah.
They have been on this man since he came down the escalator. They have used the power and the might of the FBI, the DAs, the ADAs, everything you can think of.
The intelligence
community, everybody. I mean, even Chuck Schumer said it. He said, well, if you mess with the intelligence community, they can get you 3 ways from Sunday. Well, they've been trying to get this man ever since Monday. And if this is the best This is the best you can find on this man after is it 6 years now?
Yeah. Oh, God.
After 6 years of the most intense, let's get some dirt on this man stuff, and this is the best you can get? Donald J. Trump is a saint compared to most people.
Yeah. No, I've talked about it a few times on my podcast. Yes, Trump kind of boils down into the word rigged. A lot of problems we had with the 2020 election. And regardless of whether any one of the irregularities was fraud, and from a legal point of view, they keep trying to play this technicality of what fraud is legally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, there are a lot of problems with equal protection of the law. There are a lot of problems with changing the election laws at the last minute. Confusion, voter confusion as to what the laws are. People having ballots cured in one county and not in the next. These are things that are serious issues. We had an election system before 2020 that worked. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. And then we change everything at the last minute, and all of a sudden we start getting crazy stuff.
But you mean, okay, watch this. We got to be careful here, right? We have to be careful here, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't want to get indicted. I don't want my man Isaac getting indicted, but I'm just, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just somebody who is later on proven to be right, okay? COVID-19. Up comes this incredible, thing. I call it the biddies. But it did allow them to do mail-in ballots.
Whatever excuse they needed, they were able to wreck the economy, lock people in their homes, and change the election laws at the last minute. And they created just enough misery that they were able to pull off, as Donald Trump calls it, an election heist. I mean, it's rigged, as he says.
And isn't it interesting, Isaac, that they used to call it the big lie, but now 2 years later we find out that they're the biggest liars in the game?
Oh yeah, and we knew it at the time. I mean, the lockdowns were never going to do anything about a disease. Masks aren't going to do anything about this disease. Masks are extremely unhealthy to wear. I mean, you're talking about mold. You're talking about all of the stuff that comes out of your mouth. The human mouth is one of the filthiest places on your person. So I mean, you don't want to be.
It's got some stuff going on.
You don't want to be covering that up. The point is, anyone who knows a little bit about science, real hard science, knows that. And they.
But wait a minute. Hold up, Isaac. He said anybody. He said, ladies and gentlemen, my man said anybody who knows something about science. That reminds me of this cat who looked at us in the screen like it was Judge Dredd. Remember, Judge Dredd said, "I am the law." Remember that? Yeah. There was a guy who got on the TV, and he was inside the White House, y'all, when he did it, and he said, "I am science."
Yes.
Well, we're talking about that Mr. Fauci. I don't call him a doctor. Mr. Fauci. He said he was science.
Well,
right?
and Rush Limbaugh talked about this at the time. Like, you can get a guy in a lab suit, gets on TV
right, with the white coat,
and looks professional and sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Put him in a white lab coat.
You have to, and it was staged just like the sci-fi movies that we see. You got Morgan Freeman up there, acting like we've got a meteor that's going to hit the earth, and they get the same thing going on with these guys, and they're acting and they're playing a part. And they, at first Fauci's like, no, masks are bad, don't do it. And then, everybody's got to have masks on. I mean, you can't change your story 2 times from Sunday. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, the most ridiculous part, like you said, Isaac, it was like a scene out of a sci-fi movie. You see these people being told what to do by the authorities, and without any question, they did it. They did it to such a level, they were prepared to hurt their fellow Americans if you didn't do it. And now it's 2 years later, and we're finding out so much stuff about what happened with the election, how different issues and emergencies and crises were used to culminate an environment where fraud was capable, where it was possible, and I do believe perpetrated. How do you feel about that?
There's a lot of evidence out there that there's a lot of funny business. I mean, you have to ask, for example, with Dinesh D'Souza's 2,000 Mules. I mean,
that was interesting.
What were people doing? No, I'm not going to say it happened. I'm not going to say it didn't happen. But what were people doing running these phones back and forth between these election nonprofits and ballot boxes in the middle of the night?
They had no business doing that. I mean, that's
hundreds of times. I mean, this happened. People going back and forth and back and forth. And the 2,000 that they found were just people who were going specifically between these locations a certain number of times. Awfully suspicious. And that deserves investigation.
And that deserves your participation, ladies and gentlemen, in the year 2024 election. We need poll watchers. We need poll workers. We need people who believe in this democratic republic. And because I'm not going to use the word democracy, I think it's a setup when you use that word by itself.
It means whatever people want it to mean. That's another one of the problems. Exactly. When the left loses, then democracy is dying.
Right.
When they win, democracy's
yay.
Yeah.
So
it's only democracy with my side. Otherwise, it's not democracy.
So we need you all to do that. I'm going to do my part. When I say we need you all, that's not like I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines. I have worked the polls for many years. I got all the little badges and little, rockers at the bottom of the show. I do that. And I have voted in every election since I was legally able to vote. We touched on the issue about President Donald J. Trump briefly. We have to take a station break. That's how pays the bills around here. So you know what we're getting ready to do. We're about to go and take a station break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about President Donald J. Trump and these incredible indictments, but then we're going to move on into another topic that's going on around the world, which is the Ukraine. So we're going to talk about President Trump a little bit more, and then we're going to go into the Ukrainian situation with Vlad the Impaler. We'll be right back. Go nowhere.
Step 1, train the people only to consume. Step 2, infiltrate adults with the news. Step 3, indoctrinate the children through the schools and the music and the apps on the phones that they use. Step 4, separate the right from the left. Step 5, separate the white from the black. Step 6, separate the rich from the poor. Use religion and equality to separate them more. Step 7, fabricate a problem, made a lie. Step 8, put it on the news every night. Step 9, when people start to fight and divide, take control. This is called situational design.
Hey, it's your boy Kim White, and we're back for segment 2 of our conversation. Now, I almost thought about that fried chicken and gefilte fish. Yeah, well, what about this? Think about this: matzah and pepper.
Matzah and pepper. There you go.
What do you think?
I like it.
I like it too.
Like I said, it has a good sense of humor.
Exactly. If you don't have a sense of humor out here in this crazy world, you're gonna go crazy. What was that song? You're never going to survive unless you get a little crazy.
I say it on my show all the time. If you don't laugh, you'll scream.
There it is.
In crazy times like this, the same man sounds nuts. Sounds insane. I mean, it's
bingo. So when we left off in segment 1, we were talking about this incredible persecution. Some people want to call it a prosecution. This is not a prosecution, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be fooled. See how fast I was? Like Bruce Lee. This is not a prosecution. This is a persecution. But now I want to ask you, Isaac, what do you believe the chances are he'll actually be convicted?
See, now, that's a very good question. Where in America could Donald Trump have a fair trial? Right. I mean,
that's a good question too.
I mean, that is the question. Okay, so if we have any given murder trial, if something happened in New York City, you could change the venue. You could go upstate, and you might be able to get a fair hearing. Maybe they haven't heard about it on the news, don't know the particulars. You might find an objective jury. Where in America are you going to find an objective jury to try Donald J. Trump? That's one of the reasons we don't try presidents, right. and usually not major politicians unless they've done something very seriously wrong.
It has to be really, really wrong, like taking $10 million from an oligarchy or working as a federal agent for a foreign government, right?
Being bribed while serving as vice president. Yeah,
that might cover it,
that
right?
might be, yes. So, I mean, that's the big question. Do you really think in Georgia, in a very blue county, that they're going to be able to find any jury that would have any chance of being objective? And judges, what judge are you going to trust? I mean,
Well, I certainly wouldn't trust this one. I mean, this guy had and I only get to use this word every so often. You know me, I love my little $5 words. So here's one of those $5 words, and I get to use it on this judge. This judge had the mendacity. Isn't that a good one? That's a good $5 word. This judge had the mendacity to call the trial the day before Super Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Have you no shame?
It's so obvious. It's like I said, if you don't laugh, you cry. No, but that's the thing. So could there be a conviction? Quite possibly. Will it prevent the president, Donald Trump, from running for president? No. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that you can't run for president. They could try to keep him off the ballot in some states. I will tell you, if you know anything about American history, all right, In 1860, America had two separate presidential
Learning
elections.
time, y'all. You about to learn it.
Yeah, and I'm getting my history zone. Professor history here. So in 1860 in the North, they had an election between Stephen Douglas, the Democratic candidate, and Abraham Lincoln, the Republican candidate. In the South, it was between Stephen Douglas and this guy, Breckinridge, a completely separate pro-slavery Democrat. Abraham Lincoln wasn't on the ballot in the South. Breckinridge wasn't on the ballot in the North. Two separate presidential elections.
Wow.
No foreshadowing there, right? And what happened as soon as the election was over and it became clear Lincoln had won, those states that had a separate presidential election voted. It's a really, really bad idea to play that game.
Oh my goodness. See, normally you'd have to pay tuition to get what we just got. You know what I mean? You have to fill out the applications, SAT and all that, because the professor spoke some really good stuff. Let me break that down for those of you in Rio Linda.
Yeah, as the man used to say.
As the great Rush Limbaugh used to say, God rest his soul. Look at here, y'all. What the professor just said is this. The same situation, the same energies, the same divisions, the same breakaways that caused the first Civil War in America exist today.
Yeah, history, it's been said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it mirrors.
Oh,
right? That's a way of looking at it. I always say history repeats itself. Of course, as the Bible says, the good book says, there's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun.
It's all this has happened before, and all of it will happen again.
And speaking of which, and I wanna let that go and move on into another, the second part of the show. Yeah. But like you said, there's nothing new under the sun. Look, guys, we're not babies. Corruption has been around ever since we've been around. Corruption has been around in governments ever since there have been governments. But never have we seen it so naked, so unabashed as it is today. That could be the kindle, that could be the tinder that sets this whole nation on fire if we're not careful. We have to bring back at least the notion of justice, even if it's not necessarily true. We cannot be this brazen and naked with our corruption, our inequalities in our two-tier justice system. We must ensure that President Donald J. Trump gets his due time in justice.
What we need is a fair election. What we need is a decision, we as a country, where we can all go to the election, and when it's over, say, we won or we lost, fair and square, right? You play a game. Two teams meet in the Super Bowl every year. We watch the games sometimes. They made this bad call, they made that bad call. But you know what? One team wins, and the other team
loses.
That's right.
And it's actually decided by the teams that play. There is a referee, but the referee should not, unless he's been paid off with $10 million,
Unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what we need, a fair election where everyone gets. Now,
was it 20 million?
Yeah, if Trump wins, the left's going to go nuts, and they're going to claim the election was illegitimate, and they're going to say it's racism and it's all that, and there are going to be riots in the streets in blue cities. If Trump goes down, we're all going to feel like it happened again. We're not going to feel confident that there was a fair election. We're going to feel confident that there was justice.
Well, at this point, honestly, Isaac, I just want to make sure he's allowed to run, because this whole thing is a way to ensure that he's not going to run, that he won't be eligible to run. So
let's have a fair shot.
Just give him a fair shot. Let him get these indictments out and let it be done. But now, isn't it ironic? We're talking about elections here in America and that we want them to be fair and equal. But to segue into segment 2, which is where we've been trying to go, which is the issues between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky, between Russia and the Ukraine, I believe, and President, and I'm gonna leave them in the backdrop. Okay, you can bring them up.
All right. They're looming out in the distance.
They're watching. They're watching. Watch this. My man Zelensky, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm speaking propaganda, if I'm speaking propaganda, stop me. But I think he said, unless America gives him some more money, he's not even going to hold an election. Am I right?
There's questions about whether they can hold an election. So first of all, I mean, trying to think if it's a quarter or 20% at this point, a significant part of the country's occupied.
Right.
Right, and which is a really irregular way to hold an election.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, here's the thing. So you're going to hold a presidential election, and then in 1/5 of the country, there's no election at all because it's occupied.
Well, then that's in keeping with us. If we declare war, right? Normally, the president that's seated remains until.
Well, we've generally not changed horses in elections. But, the United States has held elections, in the middle of a civil war.
Mhm.
We held an election during the middle of the Second World War.
Okay.
We have held elections.
I don't know where I got that from. The wars,
but just because we generally re-elect our presidents,
the one that was there when the war started
in office. So the trick though is, can they hold an election? And they have some constitutional questions. In Ukraine, the law is if martial law is in effect, you cannot hold an election.
And are they in martial law
They're
right now?
in a state of martial law. And
Okay.
they cannot. So this is an interesting thing. I'm a big fan of Clinton Rossiter. Clinton Rossiter was a mid-20th century American civics and political scientist, philosopher, generally speaking. He wrote about a book called Constitutional Dictatorship, where he asks the question, how do theoretically free government, ostensibly free governments handle crises? Like the Romans would appoint a dictator for a year, and dictators like Cincinnatus, for example, would serve for a year, fix whatever problem was going on in a final way.
They didn't like the idea of a king. They just couldn't handle the thought of a
But
king.
sometimes the Senate couldn't solve the problems, right? The political machine couldn't fix the problem.
Right.
Or
And
there was
the one man that was declared dictator for life, you know what happened to him.
yes,
So
killed him. That's for sure.
Yeah, they happened.
Yeah, so you have that kind of thing, and the French, for example, have what's called a state of siege. And if France is in a state of siege, they can squelch off free speech. They can control the economy.
So is Macron in any danger?
But if they're in such a state, so you have to ask yourself, if Ukraine's in this situation, can they hold an election? And if they do hold an election, and 1 in 5 Ukrainians can't vote, that's going to be true. And it's not just any part of Ukraine. It's the part of Ukraine that would need to have the biggest voice, because there's the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine that would want to have a chance.
So you brought up something very interesting with that, Isaac. That's something that, and man, I'm so glad about the guests we get on this show. We get some of the big brains on this show. You just said something that I hope the people catch. Vlad the Impaler, aka Vladimir Putin, is in control of 20% of the Ukraine, but he's in control of that 20% that he claims doesn't want to be a part of the Ukraine anyway. And with that being the case, has he effectively, ostensibly seized the most important part of the Ukraine, and shouldn't they be at the table?
It's an interesting question. At this point, given the crimes that have been committed, the war crimes, the murder, the rape, the kidnapping of children, the torture. We just found out that over 70 children tortured by the Russian government. Children tortured by the Russian government. We know that people have been tortured to death. We have footage, actual footage of them executing Ukrainian soldiers who have already been captured. Unfortunately,
they were non-combatants. They were
POWs. They were already captured and disarmed.
That's a Geneva issue right there.
Exactly. So there are some big problems with the way the Russians conduct warfare.
Okay.
In any case, Ukrainians are righteously indignant. And what needs to happen now is Russia needs to lose. And Russia needs to lose badly. They need to leave the country, and they need to leave it alone. The question of the election is just a tricky side issue there, because they're in the middle of a war. They're under siege. They're in martial law. And can you conduct an election under such circumstances? Now, I understand why the law says you can't, because think about it. How can you conduct an election without freedom of speech?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I even posed the question, because when you look at our media, they sensationalize everything, whether it be pro or con, whether it be blue or red, whether it be black or white. They're going to find that piece of red meat and throw it out there at you. And the way it's being portrayed is that Zelensky doesn't want to do an election because he wants more money from the U.S. And, right, wrong, or otherwise, children being tortured, Geneva War Convention violations, what have you. It's a sore subject to the American people anymore about our purse, about our treasure.
There's a couple things there. So when we talk about $24 billion and the $41 billion that have been spent already, right? So 41 has been spent. 24 is being asked.
So that's like 62 or 63 billion.
That's a lot of money. Almost $65 billion would be about. So that's a lot of gnocchi, if I said that right. That is a lot of moolah for sure. And the trick is, most of that has actually gone to U.S. defense manufacturers to replace weapons that we gave to Ukraine. So we gave a bunch of Javelin missiles to Ukraine.
Stop. You just did it. He stepped into the zone that I was hoping we wouldn't get into, and that's called the industrial military complex.
Oh, military. Well, okay. But honestly, that's a different problem.
Okay.
It's a problem we should deal with here in the U.S. And Ike Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex. Don't let it get out of control. It's way out of control. Okay, so the thing is, most of the money that's being spent is being spent in NATO. It's being spent here in the U.S. Some of it is being given to Ukraine to do other things with. I think there's a question about what that money goes to, and I don't think a lot of people understand how that money is being spent. Is there graft? Is there corruption? I've been following quite closely. The Ukrainians have actually been really good at keeping track of what's going on. Not perfect, but you have to look at, a true kleptocracy like Russia is one where nobody maintains the tanks, where nobody buys equipment for their troops, where their engines are falling apart.
That's why some of those tanks ended up in the mud and they're bogged down. Yeah. Even as he was trying to go into the border, there's a whole line of tanks from Russia just cold sitting there right now.
So again, not saying Ukraine is perfect or that every dollar hasn't been spent right on, but they could not have waged the war successfully to the point that they've waged it thus far.
Well, it would have been different.
If they were.
Putin would have ate them as a midnight snack, and that would have been that.
Well, that's the thing. Actually, Putin tried to buy Ukraine many times. That's where all this money, comes from. So in any case, you get this situation with, they want $24 billion more. Well, the $41 billion we've spent has done a lot for America. In fact, it's done more. That $41 billion so far has done more for American national security than the defense budgets for the last 10 years.
Come on, Isaac. Now, the people are not going to want to hear that because all we see is Biden goes up to the podium and says, we're gonna give more money to those guys.
Well, so that's the thing. Biden, and this is another issue. So we've gotten tribal. Very tribal. And it's like that just because Biden's doing it does not make it a bad thing.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Actually, Biden has been terrible. The first thing he did, Ted Cruz will tell you, the first thing he did was he let the Nord Stream 2 pipeline go forward, and he stopped sending weapons to Ukraine. Donald Trump started sending weapons to Ukraine. But he wanted to punish Ukraine because they had supported Donald Trump during the impeachment.
Now, I think that has more to do with Poroshenko, but we don't want to get all off into the rabbit hole.
But in any case, Zelensky was pro-Trump and tried to defend Trump.
Yeah, he was called the European version of Trump.
So until February of 2022, Democrats said Ukraine bad, and Republicans said Ukraine good.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, there's a war on. All of a sudden, the Democrats are like, hey, there's some money in this. Ukraine good, and Republicans bad. Anyway, so we get a lot of that. We got to watch the tribalism. But Biden has been very slow to get the appropriate weapons to Ukraine, that kind of thing. It's been
with his handling of it, with the way this president, like you said, we'll get away from the tribalism. We'll stop that. But I want to ask this question. With the handling of the Ukraine matter by this particular president, in his ineptitude, are we going to see American boots on the ground?
No, absolutely not. The number one rule of nuclear powers since 1945 is that nuclear powers cannot go to war. You cannot have American
stalemate, two kings on the board.
That's right. You cannot have American troops firing at Russians or Chinese, or the Iranians want to have the bomb so that they can be in the same club.
But Isaac, you mentioned
that's who's looming in the background. So Russia has now, as a result of this war, fallen to a second-rate power. What they were was the shell of the Soviet Union. Now they're more like Saudi Arabia in Europe. Right? They're
That's an interesting analogy for Russia. They're over there kicking butt, ain't nobody doing nothing about it.
They're a third-rate petrol state.
Okay.
At this point, so Russia's gone. I mean, even however this war ends, Russia's finished. They're not going to be able to get their oil production back up. Europe is looking already for gas everywhere else. Greece, Israel, Egypt. They want.
Well, you know what?
They don't want gas from Russia.
We got to remember, Isaac is a history professor, right?
No, history buff.
History buff. But here we go. We've stepped into some areas, and I hope you're enjoying what you're getting, because this is a whole different perspective on all these different issues. But we got to get some money up in here, and Biden ain't sending no money to this show.
That's right.
So we're going to take a station break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Ukraine, but then we're going to get back into some more national issues about relationships, about, America, black, white, religious connections. Hold on, y'all. We're going to talk about that too when we get back. But we're going for a station break right now. Go nowhere. Hey, and we're back. I got my man Isaac Kight here with me. We've been talking about a whole bunch of stuff. Again, it's not really an interview, it's a conversation. I hope you're enjoying this conversation because we're looking at the same issues, but from different perspectives, with a different mindset. And I really enjoy Isaac Kight's ideas and his perspective on some of these world and national issues. We're still talking about the Ukraine. We're still talking about what this is, what it means. So I want to ask you a question, and it goes to the heart of the matter of the investigation on the Biden family. In your estimation, when President Trump made what was called the perfect phone call, shouldn't that impeachment be removed? Wasn't it now proven that he was absolutely right?
Yeah, that the whole impeachment was ridiculous. I mean,
It was predicated on that call.
There was no quid pro quo. Actually, Vindman, when he was testifying in front of the House, was asked, and he said, "No, the president told me there was not to be a quid pro quo." Like, it's in the congressional record. It was in the testimony. How could they be alleging a quid pro quo when the president specifically told Mr. Vindman that there was not to be one? And that the corruption and the issues with Ukraine.
I understand. That's what I needed to hear you say, because I heard you in the first segment, and I understand now that you're pro-Ukraine, you're pro-Ukraine, and I get that. But the Ukraine, right? But the Ukraine's got some dirty hands here too.
Yeah, unfortunately, when they left the Soviet Union, they were they're a post-Soviet country, and all of those countries, Poland, Estonia, all of those countries have suffered terrible corruption. Ukraine, Kazakhstan, a few others, much worse than some, better than others. But the fact is, you have these people like Burisma, business leader, who pays $10 million to get this prosecutor fired. Then we have Biden bragging about getting the prosecutor fired.
I think that's Exhibit A.
Corruption.
In his impending impeachment proceedings, I think that tape is now Exhibit A.
So that's part of the big set of problems. And look, we're all tired of war. We've had all these wars. We had all this stuff. Afghanistan, we spent 20 years fighting over there just to give it back to the Taliban. A lot of us are tired.
And gave them guns. We're sorry we came to your country and here take about a $20 billion worth of our guns.
$85 billion. $85 billion. And those drones that were there are being now used
and reverse engineered
by Russia and by terrorists against Israel. And China has access to that technology too. Of course, they have a very good relationship with the Taliban. So
that's not good.
So I understand we're all kind of tired about that, but we need to be united on national security. Now, the cost is huge. I understand that, but they have to win. And you look at it, it's like all of our allies, Britain, Germany, Scandinavia, NATO, everyone's on the same page. Like we have to see Russia go down. Now, we talked about China looming in the background. What is this implications for China here? Donald Trump tried to tell the European governments that China isn't their friend. And that China is just another Putin, just another dictator.
Just a little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger, a little more powerful.
Like, you and me, you're bigger.
It turns out China's a little more powerful.
I'm big, so my man Isaac is huge, guys.
So Europe is China's biggest trade partner. And the U.S., in significant part thanks to Donald Trump, got serious about the trade conflicts and stopped letting China steal our intellectual property and that kind
of thing. Which they were taking with impunity. If you even sold music in China, it was a wrap. You had no rights to your royalties or anything. Right?
Exactly. So you have these problems. Now Europe is trading less with China, and China is watching what's happened in Ukraine. All of a sudden, the West has grown a backbone, and we are helping a small country that's being attacked by a larger country with ambitions on expansion.
Now you know what I'm getting ready to do. I got to do this, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the Southside Unicorn Show, and that's just how we do it. We're talking about the Ukraine and the West growing a backbone and all that, and then it comes to mind Nancy Pelosi flying a plane into a place and was told it'd be shot down if you did that crap. And we leave poor little Taiwan out there, China's licking their chops at them. To me, Taiwan is a baby Ukraine, right?
It's another exactly the same situation. And the U.S. has, with the slight difference that the U.S. has actually promised Taiwan to defend them.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not a treaty. It's not written in stone anymore.
Right, because Ukraine is not even part of NATO. And here we are busting out, what, $85 billion, $65 billion?
$65 billion by the time this is done. So we're helping them out so that they can defeat Russia. Russia, by the way, our biggest enemy. I don't know why people are out there making excuses for Vladimir Putin. Russia has been our biggest enemy since 1917.
Well, you know what that's about, right? You know what that's about, right? Watch this. I'm going to help my brother out this time. He helped me out in the last segment. I'm going to help him out right now. Watch this. Is not the enemy of my enemy my friend? And America being as tribalized as you pointed out, if the Democrats are down for the Ukraine, then we can't be. If the Democrats like the Ukraine, then we got to go with Putin. That's really
So China's watching what's happened in Ukraine, and China realizes that Europe is now no longer trading with China like they used to. B, the United States is selling much more weaponry to Taiwan. We're making Taiwan a porcupine. That's Senator Ted Cruz has been saying.
And they'll fight. I mean, they really will fight.
They will defend themselves. But we have a big problem. I mean, Taiwan provides all of the sophisticated microchips, semiconductors, for the entire world. And I mean, like the top line microchips that can do anything.
I'm generally biting when I do that.
From your computer to a Sidewinder missile.
To your Tesla.
To your Tesla. But I mean, that's the point. Like it's all of those things. It's your defense. So it's your national security and your car and your computer. Okay. All of those chips are made in Taiwan. And we're slowly bringing that back to the U.S. There's a new chip manufacturing center opening near Phoenix in Arizona. I've driven by it. Chip manufacturing is coming back. Funny thing, somebody passed a new tax law that allows companies to repatriate their money to the U.S. Who did that? God, what was his name? Can you help me out, brother?
Donald J. Trump.
That's right.
See, now, let me just capitalize, because we're going to talk a little bit more in the last segment, which is the fourth segment coming up. The African American community needs to unscrew itself. If that's the only way I know how to say it, I'm keeping it real. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit when we go into segment 4. But yeah, that was President Donald J. Trump. Everything we're touching on right now, almost every conversation we're having, comes back to Trump. Like, you remember the what was it, the 4 degrees of Kevin Bacon, or
something like that?
Something like that. It's called the 5. You could talk about a person, they would show you how it comes back to Kevin Bacon. Well, isn't it ironic that when we're speaking about the truth and revelations about a great many things, they keep coming back to President Donald J. Trump was right. We're going to touch on that in the next segment. We got to get ready for another station break. So it's that time. We'll be right back after these messages. Go nowhere.
Stay right here.
That's right. Hey, it's your boy Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show, and we are back for the 4th and final segment of this show. Can you believe how fast the show goes? But it goes that way when you have wonderful guests like my man Isaac here. He is filling us up with good information and a perspective about the Ukraine, about a great many things that we would not otherwise have. But let me just give you a bit of a voir dire, on my man Isaac Kight real quick. Isaac, what is your religious persuasion?
I am Jewish.
And do you have any familiarity with the European continent?
Yes, I've been to Europe a few times, and
got homies over there too, right?
Yeah, I've been following European politics for 25 years. I've written about it for at least 15.
Exactly. And when it comes to his perspectives, they are absolutely varied and all across the board. So we have an excellent guest with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm going to try to pick his brain real quick. But we're going to get back into the Ukraine issue real quick because we're running out of time here. But there's so many things that we had agreed we talk about. So we're going to try to squeeze them in to this last segment of the show. back to the Ukraine, China, and Russia. How do you see this playing out?
Well, at this point, I don't think China is going to be able to attack Taiwan. In this situation, Xi Jinping now doesn't have the economic backing, and his economy is headed to dark places.
He's got the laboratory, brother.
There is no economic model for how the Chinese economy works in 2030. And that is a disaster. Chinese demographics, their population shrinking, Russian population shrinking. So the bad guys are going away. And they're going away in significant part because we're helping Ukraine defend themselves and showing China what we would do with Taiwan at the very least, helping Taiwan defend itself. And maybe
I see what you're saying. We're willing to do that for the Ukraine, and we've already started to weaponize
Taiwan.
Then we're going to be in for the. We're committed.
If you're Xi Jinping, that's a big dice roll.
Yeah.
I mean, before February of 2022, maybe he gets in there quick, and we go and look at the situation and just say, a lot of people would die if we go to war. Maybe we back up. Maybe we negotiate. Not anymore. That's not the game we're playing in the world right now. So that's the point.
Well, because of the nuclear idea, but I want to be devil's advocate right here. I don't like messing with the devil, but I'm gonna go ahead and be the devil's advocate right here. I hear what you're saying about China's trepidation about actually going to war with Taiwan, but they're really serious about Taiwan. They're serious about it. And what that reminds me of is this moment in time where was it MacArthur or Patton? One of those guys had managed to push the North Koreans all the way past Panmunjom, and
it's MacArthur right there.
That's MacArthur, right? He was doing his job. He was handling these guys. And then unfortunately on one morning, these guys came running down from the top of North Korea and they pushed through, but it wasn't them. It was the Red Chinese. They came in great numbers and pushed us all the way back down to Busan, if I'm not mistaken, before we could really figure out what happened.
South of Seoul. And it was a good deal for Mao because the soldiers he sent in there to die in the meat grinder were the ones who had surrendered from Chiang Kai-shek's army. So he sent the soldiers he thought he couldn't rely on to go get slaughtered by American bombs.
And that's what I love this conversation we're having right now, because that was my biggest concern. When you consider the population of China, they got blood to spare. I don't see where he would actually, because you've already said that it's a stalemate for the nuclear idea. So conventional warfare is the only avenue, and it doesn't seem like we're pulling back from that. When you see the skirmishes that are going on in Alaska, when you see the incursions of the Soviet fighters and the Chinese boats, and so we're dancing around each other right now. And what I'm trying to pose is this: they got blood to spare, okay? And they've already shown us that every now and then they'll come with a surprise snap attack and jack you up so fast you don't have time to even understand. We see what Pearl Harbor did to us. We see what 9/11 did to us as we draw near to the 9/11 memorial. I don't see where China is not entertaining something along those lines.
I think they definitely were before the invasion of Ukraine. And seeing how that's gone has changed. It will definitely.
So you're going to stick with that. The Ukrainian issue is changing.
And the significant issue is European trade. Okay. Now that the trade's dropping off, see, if you're trading up to a point and then there's a war and it drops off,
that messes up everybody's stuff.
But your wallet's full.
Okay.
Now the wallet's being pinched already. She is feeling the burn from Europe cutting back on its trade with China.
Trying to learn what he's saying because he's believing in this. I get this.
Before any conflict happens. So he's already, it's hitting China's bottom line. And the whole Chinese economy is put together. It's a house of cards. I mean, it's all built on these real estate
all I got to do is stop ordering from Amazon and get done.
Yeah, all of their debt is backed by these real estate projects that are just vacant apartment buildings that nobody lives in. I mean, it's all monopoly money.
Okay.
Somebody blows too hard on the board, it's all going to go fly. So the point is, it's very, if you want more detail on that, on my show, I go into great detail.
Well, you're going to have to invite me on your show so I can learn some more.
We can talk some more, but in any case, the world is a safer place. So
because of the Ukraine,
because of our helping Ukraine.
That is an interesting take on that matter. I never thought about it that way, but then again, that's the whole purpose of having these conversations, is so that we can discuss diverse issues, diverse ideas. And we got my man TootsSweet from New York trying to get in here. Are you there, Toots? He has an interesting stage name, but let's see. I gotta unmute you, or you gotta unmute yourself. Are you there?
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I passed out.
You hear us, the conversation's just about to get really interesting.
Yeah.
Let me shut my TV. Hold on.
Turn your TV down. Turn your TV down.
My man, what's going on?
Watch this, bro. We were just sitting and having a really good conversation about a whole lot of stuff, about a whole lot of places. But, the last time, and ladies and gentlemen, for the benefit of the person that just came on, this is my friend TootsSweet. He is a hardcore patriot out of New York City. We met years ago because, like I said, this is one bad white boy right here. He's as tough as Scott Libido, and we both know Scott Libido. We both call him friend. In fact, the last time you and I talked, Toots, we did a show together, you, me, and Scott Libido, right?
That's right.
So let me explain this guy to y'all, okay? You imagine it's the heart of the Obama presidency. Ain't nobody talking bad about this brother. Ain't nobody doing it. But then all of a sudden I come across this song called A Pirate in the White House. And it was made by a man named TootsSweet out of New York. Right. And that's my friend that's with us right now. One bad white boy, because he ain't scared of nobody. Speaks the truth all day long. So now I got two people that I'm absolutely crazy about. I got Isaac. And I got my man Toots here. What's that in the background? Toots, is that your new background right there?
That is my new background. I don't even know what. Oh, yes, that's my new background. That's the Tootsie Bound.
You know what we have to do? We're going to have to doctor up this last segment so that it works out better, because to get the two of you guys together, I wish Scott Libido was here too. But I know he's a busy man right now, out there trying to protect you guys from that invasion of undocumented moving in.
Yeah, I mean, he's really doing a great job. I mean, it's out. They're putting it right in Staten Island. They want to put people right in Staten Island, and it's right across the street from a school.
It looks like military placement to me, if you ask me. It looks like military placement, but that's because these are young men between the ages of 18 and 35, correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I mean. I haven't seen all the people that are going there, but it does seem like that would be more realistic. It doesn't make sense.
Well, watch this too. I'm glad you joined us, but let's get this train back on the tracks that it was headed on real quick. We're wrapping up our conversation about the Ukraine and Russia, but then we're going to segue back into America and some of the issues that are going on between the whites, the blacks, the Asians, the Jews, everybody.
But let's talk about some race politics.
Yeah, we're about to get into some race stuff. So I'm glad you came in right on time, brother. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up, Isaac, with
we're done with that. Let's just go to the next thing. I finished it with my last comment. You can just trim it right there.
Okay. So here we go. Toots, we're about to go into segment 4. Segment 4 is going to be a little touchy for some people because, America is very sensitive right now, But I can remember a time when in the civil rights movement, you would see Dr. King locked arm in arm with certain people. Now, when I was a child, to me, white is white. White is white, black is black. So that's what you see. You see the black Dr. King Jr. and then some white person locked arms with him walking. I'm thinking that's really cool because at least white people are down with us. They understand what we're going through. But as you get older and you focus on things even more, you learn that person who is white is also from the Jewish community.
That's right.
So when I see that and I recognize that a great many sacrifices were made by the Jewish community for the black community, it vexes me that those two communities are so diametrically opposed to each other lately, or it appears that way. What does it look like in New York, Toots? How is the relations out there?
Well, New York has a big Jewish community, as you know. It also has a big black community, as you know, and there's a lot of, the media portrays, it picks apart things. Like if there's somebody has an argument, they'll take that and make like that's the norm. New York City, every day. There's not a day that goes by in my life that I don't see a Jewish person, a black person, a Spanish person, a Puerto Rican person, an Italian person, an Irish person, a Greek person, an Indian person, a Chinese person, a Korean person, and I see everything, and we all get along. Everybody gets along. If we're respectful with each other, we see each other. Hey, how you doing? I know we're all friends. I got so many friends. I have every different race. But then there'll be one thing that happens, and then they blow it up. And then what happens is once the media blows things up, then it becomes a trend. So like then you'll see trends happen. Like all of a sudden there was a time where a lot of black people were attacking Asian people for no reason, but the media was pushing it. The media pushed this, and that's
exactly.
There was a time where it depends on what happens, but you have your Hasidic Jewish areas in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which are literally right next to the big black neighborhoods, and they clash sometimes, but it was always media driven. There was always something that sparked it. It didn't just happen because we deal with each other every day. I mean, it doesn't matter.
You brought up a good point there, Toots, that in the general, everybody gets along. But it seems like the media is playing a particular role. Isaac, what is your view on that?
Well, I mean, my question is, and what I'd like to ask you while we're on the show, you have people out there like we have Charlemagne the God, right? Who, at one point, somebody was talking about people being BLM rioters being arrested, and rioters get arrested. That rioting is illegal. You get arrested.
You shall not assemble without a permit.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're being peaceful. You're being peaceful. If you're rioting, you're breaking things, you're throwing things, you're hurting people, you get arrested. That's the law. And his response to this was, it just shows that the Jews are still in charge. What? And then we get Jamie Foxx recently tweet about Jews, and we get this sort of commentary we're getting. The less said of Ye or Kanye or whatever we want to say, the better. The point is, we're getting a lot of popular figures in the black community who are being anti-Semitic and saying anti-Semitic things, right? And that would be bad enough, except that then we're getting a lot of violence against Jews on the part of African Americans. And so it seems that there's a connection between a certain attitude about Jews and attacks upon Jews.
Well, is it necessarily an attitude, or is it a okay? And Toots, chime in just a second here. I want to preface this real quick. Isn't it ironic that because I'm a contributor to an organization called the Political Vanguard, upon which you're a part of, and I'm very honored to be there. I did a op-ed on the unfortunate violence that happened in Florida, where this racist person walked in and he gunned down 3 blacks. And it's a horrible situation. We all denounced that. And in my op-ed, I said, America is a great melting pot, which New York is the symbol for that, with the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. And it's like the left and the media has pulled our melting pot off of the stove, and they put a skillet in its place and turned up the heat.
They're just frying us all.
They're frying us all.
That's
where, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure you two gentlemen might agree with this, and I think you're asking me from my perspective as a black person, a person of color.
What's going on?
A DOS, a descendant of slaves. I'm all of those things. What's going on? Well, I wish I could answer. The only way I can answer that, Isaac, is this. The media is irresponsible. The media has chosen a side in the political arena. The media is now part of a globalist ideal. And unfortunately, when it comes to the black community, which has not healed yet, it hasn't healed yet. When you consider the incredible damage that was done to us as a people, 435 years, we got treated less than human. We've only even been allowed to think of ourselves as humans in 60 years. You can't expect to get much change from that in 60 years. If you put it in its own environment, it took 425 years, over 20 generations, to create the black person that exists today. But you have political expedience, you have political agendas working and using the misfortune I hope this answer doesn't become too long, but using the misfortune and the misshapen hearts of the Black community, we're basically nothing but cannon fodder in a larger environment than ourselves. We're hurt, we're angry. We don't know who to be hurt and angry at anymore. That's my opinion. That's not necessarily everybody's. And because we have not yet healed in areas where human beings need to heal with that kind of damage, when the media tells you, oh, this person is the reason you're suffering. Okay, for example, in New York, they were told after COVID that, it was the Chinese that were responsible in the laboratories and all of that. Mm-hmm. Perhaps that's what facilitated a lot of the violence from Blacks to Asians. Well, when it comes down to economic advancement, those who are actually stealing the money, those who are actually in control of the money, well, they don't want you finding them. So what do they tell you? Al Sharpton being one of those people. What was the term he used? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm using this term only as a documentary. I'm not using it as a supportive word of myself or with my friend who is a Jewish gentleman. But I have to say what Al Sharpton said. He said something about, if those Jews want to get it on, pin their yarmulkes back and come out of Hymietown. Is that in New York? Or I don't know what he meant by that.
Yeah, Al Sharpton's always been a race baiter. That's his whole career. My cousin went to school when they were kids. He was just a troublemaker his whole life. That's what he did.
He's a loser. Yeah. And that's why I call him Al Not So Sharp Sharpton. And so that's to answer your question, Isaac. I believe, I'm not trying to say that they're not to blame because every man is responsible for his own actions.
Right.
But there's a thing that I believe in, and you've heard me say it TootsSweet. There's a thing I believe in, Isaac. It's called the conditioning. The Black community as a whole has been conditioned to respond to the will of the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party wants this. That's why the divide is between the Jewish persons and the Black people, because the Democrats are learning from their lessons. They learned in the 1950s and 60s when the Jews and the Blacks and the Latinos came together for civil rights. We were unstoppable. So what do? You stop that mess. You make sure that those two communities can no longer get along.
So then the question becomes, how do we get the love back? I mean, I think back, and I want to hear your perspective on it too, but, my dad went out and marched with Dr. King in Stockton.
Is that right?
And Jews locked arms with their Black brothers and sisters.
Give me a lock arm.
Right?
Arm in arm. Like, his arm is bigger than mine, but
we marched arm in arm for civil rights. Now, at that time, in the 1950s, we had this idea of whiteness that had started during the First World War. But by the end of the Second World War, we had this idea of white all together. No more Irish, Italians, Jews. And so Jews were in the club.
Right.
We had made the club.
You're in the club. I mean, come on, look, we've been doing the in the club.
We were in the club, right? And Jews, being comfortable in the club, refused to stay in the club and came back out of the club to walk hand in hand with their Black brothers and sisters to make sure that America would be free for everyone, okay? Because it was not enough for us to sit by and watch that injustice go on. Even though we had won our war, our struggle, to a large extent, Jews were accepted in the country, but it wasn't good enough for us. We had to go and make sure everyone was included. That's not fair.
Could that be where the immortal words, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, actually comes out?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that.
So, I'd like to hear.
Well, what I was going to say is, I think that especially in the celebrities like Kanye West, what they're talking about, they're miswording what they want to say. It's like every community has something about it. Like if you're Italian, I'm half Italian. So if you're Italian, and let's just say somebody was working for Italians and they were working for the mob, and they were saying, man, these Italians, but they were really talking about the mob. And when you talk about the Italian mob, Italians get offended. They're like, hey, just because we're Italian doesn't mean we're in the mob. Yeah. I think what happens is with now Hollywood, I don't know, do you ever hear the Castari? You ever hear the Castarian Mafia? You know the Castarian Mafia?
Mm-hmm.
Hear that? You know what that is, Eric? The Castarian Mafia? I mean, Isaac?
Castilian, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah. So it's like, I don't even think they were Jewish. I think they took over the Jewish religion and just...
Wait a minute, are you trying to tell me that the Jews have a mob?
So,
Don't sell
so
it short. Jews had. I mean, we had Mickey Cohen, one of the meanest
you had
gangsters.
Meyer Lansky, you had Buck Siegel. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
we had our share of
The
gangsters.
Italians and the Jews got along too back in the day.
I mean, you can watch The
New
Godfather.
York
You get the
City.
Corleones and you get the Roth.
is that
Yeah.
how that goes? Okay.
So like the George Soroses and the Rothschilds, these are all the people that rule the world, so to speak. And I think when he's talking, like he totally mischaracterizes his work, because you can't say the Jews. That just is not right. So I mean, I like Kanye, I like what he does, I like what he stands for, but that was just wrong.
But let me stop you right there for a minute, Toots. I got to ask a question to both of you gentlemen. When you consider that we're talking about America, there you are in New York with the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Here you are, the gentleman that you are. I can't help but think about America and the freedom of speech. When does it stop being freedom of speech and become an anti-Semitic statement? I hear what Ye said. Ye said some pretty crazy stuff, but at the same time, Jamie Foxx said some things that I don't know if the world wants to say that was totally anti-Semitic.
And I don't know that he knew what he was saying. And I want to pause right there. The words that are written on the Statue of Liberty from the poet Emma Lazarus was Jewish.
No way.
So it's a Jewish poem, Jewish woman's poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, and which is there's a power in that, because America has all these immigrant communities: Irish, Italians, Jews. We've forgotten that there were white minorities, again, because we created this idea of whiteness. But there were signs in New York. You can still see pictures of it around. Help wanted, Irish need not apply.
What?
Right?
The
and the Italians got discriminated against.
Irish and the Italians just when I was a kid, my cousins could not go out with Irish guys, and they were vice versa. The Irish and the Italians hated each other. It's now.
So
when I grew up in a place called Massapequa, Long Island. Now Massapequa, Long Island was all Jews and Italians, and we used to call the town Matzo Pizza. Was Massapequa.
That's great, Matzo Pizza. So I guess what the two of you are trying to say, and I'm going to join in with you on this, is that the brothers really ain't got much to complain about, because what they think is something that's happening just to us has pretty much happened to everybody.
It has, but obviously, it's actually been the way it's been portrayed. It's horrible, and I think there's a disservice done, because history is not being portrayed properly. We're not learning proper history, and they want to continue to keep the Black people thinking that they are not part of this community. They want to continue to tell Black people that don't love America, because that's
where that division between the Jewish people and the Black community is important to this mission.
All of our founding fathers were racist. Don't love America. This is what they tell the Black community, so they don't want them to have an interest in the greatest country that's ever lived. They don't want them to participate in the American dream, because
so we're being disenfranchised by a lie.
By the Democrat Party. Only, really. It's the Democrat Party, it's the school system, it's entertainment, it's every single entity that the Democrats have taken over. So when people say it's the Jews or it's this, I look at it differently. I look at it's the Democrat Party. Everything that's evil on this earth came from the Democrat Party. Even, I mean, I can make that case. And
not everything evil, but it certainly is behind a lot of problems.
Even Adolf Hitler said he learned eugenics from Margaret Sanger, and he learned propaganda. He learned propaganda from the Democrats right here on Madison Avenue in our avatar.
Right quick. So watch this, guys. This has been an awesome show. I hate that you came in on the tail end of it, but I'm looking at what you got back there, which is TootsSweet, not your mama's news, right?
My Tootsie Mom.
My man Isaac has his show, which is the Israeli, and I keep getting the tongue twisted out.
Inside Isreal News.
He has the
hold on.
Israel News.
Wait, Inside Israel. Do you know Michael Gano?
No, the name doesn't ring a bell, unfortunately.
Oh, because he does a show called Insight to Israel and Beyond.
What?
I haven't seen.
Plagiarism.
Insight to Israel and Beyond. I'm
inside Israel.
Inside Israel. He does Insight to Israel. I thought maybe you know. I want Wednesday.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in the community. I don't know everybody, unfortunately, but I do my own advocacy.
Mhm.
So
So what I wanted to, as we wrap up a little bit, I wanted to just ask, Isaac, what made you do inside the Israel news? What made you want to?
Well, so years ago, I went to Israel to get my MBA,
Okay.
and I got it at Israel's top business school, Bar Ilan University.
Mm.
And while I was going there, I got a volunteer opportunity at the State Control Committee of the Knesset. Knesset is Israel's parliament.
Mhm.
The State Control Committee is the oversight body. So in a parliamentary system, the parliamentary majority is also the executive. They are the government.
Right.
And
Which is
government
the problem they're having right now is, does the military have to bow down to the Knesset, or are they still their own?
There's some back and forth on a lot of things. So
Mm.
and then with the judicial system, I go into explicit detail
Mm.
in my show. But so I was working for the State Control Committee as a volunteer, helping them translate things into English, writing
Mm.
letters, doing things like that. And I learned after following Israeli politics for years and having that opportunity.
So
to be there.
let me snap in here real
Inside.
quick. The language that is spoken by the Jewish people is Hebrew, right?
That's right.
So you speak Hebrew.
A little, not perfectly. I know enough to be dangerous.
Okay.
I tried to learn more, but in Israel, everybody there speaks English, and they wanted to speak English. They love Americans.
Right.
So, so I got that opportunity. When I got back to the U.S., of course, over the years, all of my friends calling me, Isaac, what's going on? Isaac. So I found myself repeating the same information over and over again. And I thought, what if I just make a podcast, make a news show,
Wow.
tell everybody what.
Wow.
So I started off doing Israeli news, and increasingly people were asking questions about Europe because I was making allusions to European politics and then world events. And so finally, I just made it a general show. It's called Inside Israel News, but I just do general news. I have an Israel segment. I talk a little bit about American news, and I talk about world events.
Okay.
And that way you kind of get a bunch of news commentary in one. But I'm plugged in and tuned in as somebody who is fond of history to all of the things that have happened before now and where all of those trends are going.
Okay.
And then you can't predict the future perfectly, but you can look at demographics, you can look at economics, and you can see which direction are things moving.
So if you wanted to further your knowledge about what in the world, and no pun intended when I say that, what in the world is going on, you want to check out Inside Israel News. That's going to be with Isaac Kight. That I check it out. I like it. It's very information intense. However, I gotta say that it's information intense, but that's a good thing. You can go in there and get what you want. And then you got my brother over here on the East Coast, which I'm sure is pretty late for you right now. What is it, like 3 a.m, 4 a.m?
It's going on 4.
Thank you for making the effort to show up on the show, brother. I truly appreciate you.
Oh,
And then we have TootsSweet, Not Your Mama's News. What's going on with that, Toots? What's happening out there in New York?
It's called the Tootsie Bomb Show. I do that 3 times a week, and it's Tootsie Bomb Show, Not Your Mama's News. We do that every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And then I'm on another show called Inside Israel and Beyond, which is on Wednesdays. That's an afternoon show that I do with my friend Michael Gano. He's really great. And then I'm on another show I do every Tuesday night and Thursday night on the Patriot Soapbox, which is the MAGA Mullet Show. That goes on.
Okay.
10 to 1 New York City time. My show's 9 to 10 New York City time at night.
You staying busy is what's happening. I'm gonna re-air that show that you and his name is Scott Labito and myself. I'm gonna re-air that show. That man is out there in New York fighting a war. The two of you, have you guys caught up since? Were you able to catch up with him? I
spoke to him. I haven't got a chance to speak to him after that. No.
Okay. Because I'm really proud of what he's out there doing. I think all of us, no matter what state or city you find yourself in, look for the fight. I think that's the only thing I can say is look for the fight and get involved in it somehow. I want to give the last closing words to my friend Isaac Kight, but Toots, how can people find you if they want to catch up with your show?
You could go to TootsSweet.com. That has all my links to all my music and stuff like that. Or you can go to the TootsieBomb.com, 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 TootsieBomb.com.
There it is. I can't wait to take in some of your shows real quick. So, Isaac, in keeping with the Southside Unicorn Show, the last word is yours.
Well, I want to take a minute to talk about America. Okay. We've danced around this idea for a little bit. There's never been a country like America.
Never seen one like it.
We have a saying in the Jewish community: "There's no place for Jews like America, even in Israel."
Wow.
Because there's no place where Jews are accepted and part of the community and free like here. I mean, in Israel, we fight amongst ourselves. We argue with each other. So, it becomes a big problem. So this country really has something magic, something special. And yes, there's been a lot of division. There's a lot of unfortunate history. We inherited slavery from the British. We inherited anti-Semitism from Europe. It took us a long time to grow out of all of these things, and for people to stop seeing themselves as Italians, as Germans, as Jews, as blacks, and just say we're Americans. But that's a beautiful thing, because an American can be anything they want to be. And we can live as long as we respect each other, we don't hurt each other. We can live our lives the way we want to live them and be free. And it is a beautiful thing, but it takes respect for one another, and it takes love. We have to defend our fellow Americans.
And I want to inject this in. That's a beautiful statement, Isaac. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to be surrounded by my brothers and sisters like yourselves, that truly live the American credo. Because what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, especially Toots, how you and I formed our friendship over the last 20 years now, right? It's been a minute, 12, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah, been at least since 2000, 2009, I think, or something like that.
Yes, it's a little bit longer than that.
Oh, no, it was from Facebook. No, you're right. I mean, that's MySpace. It was from MySpace.
We've been around each other for a long time.
Holy, wow, that's right.
We're getting old, brother. That's what it is. We're getting old.
Oh, no.
But here we go.
Oh.
What I want to put in here is this: what I feel from both of you, what I feel from a great many people that I surround myself with. We deal with each other by the content of our character, and isn't that the ultimate goal? I mean, and I feel that with you, Isaac. I feel that with you, Toots. You know what I mean? We need to, as Isaac posed the question, which is a great and important question, how do we get back to normal and away from this incredible pressure cooker that this entity, I call it an entity, whether it's the left, Democrats, progressive, whatever, this entity wants us at enmity with each other. And I would rather feel the love the way we have it right here, right now.
We have really great positive things happening, though. And you just take a look at the examples that are out there. Vivek Ramaswamy, running for the Republican nomination. He's much beloved. He's obviously the child of immigrants to America, and we don't care. We don't care where he's from. We care what he can do. That
never even crosses my mind. When I hear him talk, I hear him. He's speaking American themes. So it's like
I hear other Republicans who say that they love Larry Elder, that they love Tim Scott. They don't care what their skin color is. They're listening to that message and they're loving that. I think a lot of people are already, supporting Donald Trump.
Oh, it's a wrap.
But what we've got here, we're looking at that. We've got Ted Cruz. We've got all these. We've got a great diversity.
We got a good bench.
Some of that love coming back.
Yes.
What we've got to do is stop the division and the hate. People kind of look past that stuff, and so we can feel the brotherhood again.
There it is. There it is. So Toots, I know you out there fighting a good fight in New York City. Going to come out there and holler at you pretty soon, man. I mean, it's got to be done. I look at it this way: we are the alternative to Charlemagne, Doug God, and all those people that are putting these divisive messages out there. Well, we're the answer to the other side of that, which is love, peace, harmony, respect, judge each other by the content of our character. How much I see that flag in the backdrop, that American flag. That's what we're about. That's what we're about.
God bless America, and God has blessed America.
Amen.
Absolutely. It's all about no judgment, non-judgment. You can judge people on their actions, but not on their look. You don't judge people by the way they look. I don't care if you're walking down the street with purple hair, wearing, I don't care what you look like. And then all of a sudden you meet them and they're great. They're beautiful people. I see it all the time. And then you see somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer who's walking around in a suit and a tie and the guy's cutting people. So it's not about how you look. It's about who you are. Don't everybody, and it's fine. And people present themselves in a way because they want people to have a reaction, which is fine. You don't know until you meet them. That's the way it is. And I only know that from personal experience. Now, if you're from a small town, maybe, or even if you're from way out east Long Island or upstate New York, you could be right here in New York and it's the same thing. And you only see people that dress exactly like you, act like you, and talk like you. Then when you see people that aren't like that, you might be like, "Whoa, what the hell is this?" And that's normal. But you have to people, and people shouldn't even say anything about that, because if you look completely different and you're acting different, you should expect a different reaction, because that's what you're doing.
And watch this. As again with the Southside Unicorn Show, we could talk all night long because we really dig into the issues. All morning, yeah. We dig into the issues. TootsSweet, I'm glad that you joined us all the way from New York City, and it's the time difference is incredible. So I know you got to get your sleep, or you're probably doing some producing. While I got you on the air, I want you to do me a favor, brother. I want you to verbally give me permission to use your music on my show.
You have complete carte blanche. Is that the word? Carte blanche. Carte blanche to every one of my songs. I've told you before. I'm going to tell you it again right here. Whatever you want, please. I'd be honored for you to use them. You know that.
Because I ran into a copyright problem with YouTube. They tried to come at me about using one of your songs.
They do that to me.
That's my homie.
I actually get the same copyright things because I think it's CD Baby. I think it's from CD Baby, and I put my own song up, and they take it down. It's the craziest thing. It's crazy, baby. It's not a strike on you. You just have to. I mean, I don't even know how that works. But
what I did was I went ahead and challenged them. I said, I know him. That's my homie. I can pick up the phone and call him. So they dropped the charges. They were like, okay, you didn't copyright infringe. But ladies and gentlemen, just as we wrap up the show, I want you to go and check out TootsSweet's music. This man is a musical genius. He has songs for almost every contemporary issue that's going on in America. Again, when I first met him, I'm using it as a fun thing, as a loving term. This bad white boy right here, he was talking trash about Obama when it wasn't safe when brothers couldn't even talk bad about Obama. My man TootsSweet was like, yo, we got a pirate in the White House. After 20-something years, it looks like you were absolutely right, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it is wild. And yeah, if you want to check out my music, that's great. It's there for everybody to see. It's all free. It's on YouTube and it's on Rumble. A lot of stuff I literally took a lot of my stuff down from YouTube, so now I put them all up on Rumble. So if you go to Rumble and go to TootsSweet, it's a little bit different now. And Rumble is not as good as YouTube, sound quality, and it's harder to find stuff. And but that's what us.
Well, we're gonna get it out there and whatnot. But again, I want to thank you, TootsSweet, for coming on to the Southside Unicorn Show. Hopefully, you'll have me as a guest on your show pretty soon.
Absolutely, we say over here.
Absolutely. Isaac, I'm grateful that we had a chance to get together and have this show. Ladies and gentlemen, when I talk to him, when we have these are the things that happen. Isaac has like a wealth of information up there in his head, and I hope you all were able to get something out of this show. So, Toots, because I could just go on and on, but I don't want to go too far. Is there any questions you might want to ask Isaac real quick before we wrap up?
You know what? I would like to ask him a question. I got two questions, if you don't mind. First of all, I'm also half Lebanese. So my father's Lebanese. Now, when you were in Israel, did you ever get a chance to go to Lebanon or no?
I did not get a chance to go to Lebanon. Actually, one of my best friends is Lebanese. He's a Greek Orthodox Christian from Lebanon. Okay. Who has taught me a lot about just his perspective and what he's done. So, but Lebanon used to be a very beautiful country and a very modern, westernized, very prosperous country, and unfortunately torn apart by war, by the same problems Israel's dealing with.
Actually, Lebanon, Beirut used to be like the Fort Lauderdale of the Middle East.
The Paris of the Middle East.
Yeah. Now, a different question would be, my friend who was in Israel went to Israel and everything like that, and he's not Jewish, but he loves the Jewish people. He was there, living there. He went there to help when I forget exactly what his cause was, but he was there, and he saw a lot of things in Israel that was really flipping him out. About everybody. First of all, got the hokey pokey, pushing that big time on people, and now he's in the mindset because of the hokey pokey. He thinks that everybody was betrayed because of that, and he thinks that Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump are both in this whole thing. That, he doesn't trust either one of them, and I kind of like both of them.
Tell me you're not breaking out the aluminum foil, man. I'm not. Is that aluminum foil?
No, there's a difference. Yeah, you finish with your thought, and I'll.
Well, that's basically. I mean, like, what is your thought of what's going on with that, if you have
So
any?
Israel has a different culture than America does. America, we value and prize individualism above all else, and the individual choice. So, whether you get the jab or not, some of us, myself included, I got the Pfizer vaccine, for example. I travel a lot for work, and I thought if there was any way that I could prevent myself from spreading it to others, even unintentionally. And then it turns out, we found out like a week after, it came out a week after I got it, that it does nothing of the sort. It doesn't protect you from getting sick. People were getting the jab and then getting sick right afterwards. Not only that, it doesn't prevent you from transmitting the virus. So I'm sitting here like, what did I get it for? What's it supposed to do?
So what is it, sugar water?
Yeah. So in Israel, they had a different vaccine, and I'm not going to speak to its veracity, but Israeli culture is not our culture. Israelis come from Europe, from the Middle East, and some from America. A lot of American Jews there, and from Russia, and it's also a melting pot for Jewish people and plenty of non-Jews who live there quite peacefully and happily with benefits of freedom and what have you. In any case, they have a little bit different culture there. And so their idea was, excuse me, to ameliorate the problem, especially to protect the elderly by getting their vaccine, which is not our vaccine and hasn't had the same problems that our vaccine has had.
But let me just interject real quick. If I'm not mistaken,
taking care of that stuff. And there was less resistance to that compliance, but at the same time, you also haven't seen the kinds of shenanigans around it.
And that's what I want to interject real quick. It seems to me that what I'm getting from Israel, they really have their act together when it comes to science, medicine, and the water reclamation programs in Israel are superior. So, Toots, I guess you brought up a really good question. I take the aluminum foil and put it back in the box. This ain't aluminum foil. That was a cogent question, right?
Yes, and there's always when government does things, there's always that challenge. Did they do the right thing? I think the Israeli government thought it was acting out of a genuine concern for protecting people. We have some pretty solid evidence that there, as much as here, that the lockdowns didn't work, that was unnecessary, that the jabs weren't doing any good, and in Israel there is, mostly beneath the news, so the news that's in English that you can read, but I'm going to be talking about a little bit more on my show. There is some rumblings about government accountability with some of the things that were said and some of the things that were done, and the question is to whether this was really necessary.
But can the government be sued for acting in the interest of the people? I mean, is litigation going to be possible?
I don't know. First, you have to make it public that you have to have those courageous voices who go forward and say this was wrong, because then
that
you
would
want to
be
make sure
those of you that we call whistleblowers.
Yeah,
stop blowing some whistles.
So we don't do it again, and that's the key thing. That's the first foremost, because these didn't work. We can never do lockdowns again.
Oh, it ain't happening
because it didn't work.
Can we have a moment together, then, the three of us? We will not comply.
We will not comply.
Not at all.
Never.
I barely complied the first time. I mean,
Exactly.
We will not comply. Listen, they tricked a lot of us the first time. A lot of us didn't get tricked.
I'm not advocating violence. That's not what I'm saying. But I am going to point out an obvious situation here. I heard that in China they were actually using soldering tanks and locking people in their homes. They welded people in. Well, see, you can't weld a guy in that's got an AK.
What really disturbed me with the whole COVID thing was just the things that it brought back up into the surface in our society. They were going to, for example, and Senator Cruz talked about this a lot, that they were looking at kicking 40% of Washington, D.C.'s kids out of the schools because they wouldn't get the vaccine, because as it happens, a lot of people in the Black community don't trust doctors.
And rightfully so.
And so now, in New York, you had restaurants that were making people present their. So I mean, that's literally racial discrimination now.
I'm going to tell you how crazy this is.
We're going to have to wrap up this show, but ladies and gentlemen, and especially my brothers and sisters in the Black community, with the brain power that's assembled here between TootsSweet, my man Isaac, myself, he broached on something that I've been trying to warn you about for almost 7 years. Yes, it was a vaccine card. And yes, if you didn't have it, you did not get goods and services. But see, in Woolworth, in the south side of Chicago, back in 1960, brothers didn't get goods and services back then either. There's always another way to bring back what was old and make it new again. If you don't understand what the left and this progressive idea is really all about, that's why you need to listen to these shows. You need to listen to TootsSweet Show. You need to listen to Inside Isreal. And you need to listen to the Southside Unicorn Show because we're trying to put you on tip. Okay?
Can I end it? I'm just going to say one last thing because you touched.
We always want to say one last thing. Do it.
Yeah. Here in New York City, the one time, and this was crazy, this is what happened. MAGA and the Black Lives Matter actually came together over the vaccine mandate. They were all protesting against the vaccine mandate together. I mean, it wasn't like a huge thing, but there was probably about 200 or 300 people together from Black community and the MAGA community, Black Lives Matter. And they was, because when you have something unite over, you see, the reason why we can't unite with the Democrats is because they think that government, it's God versus government. They trust government, we trust God. You can't unite. But when there's a mandate that people do not trust, and the Black community, I don't even know why they're still.
Well, watch this, Toots. Watch this. Bottom line is this: when it comes to all of us living our collective lives here in this great melting pot that we call America, freedom should always be the intersection where we all meet and agree. Freedom should always be the intersection.
Exactly.
Where we all meet and agree. I don't care what walk of life you come from. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I want to say this has been, again, one of those energized shows where you just don't want to stop. I would love to continue this conversation. Perhaps we'll have another show, part 2, part 3. But this is Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show, and we are out.
Wow, an hour can go by so fast. Thank you for sharing this time with me. There's no place I'd rather be. Nothing more I'd rather do than being right here doing this show for you. This is Ken White, host of the Southside Unicorn Show, and we are out.